1984 Oldsmobile Delta 88 Royale Brome Edition. It's going to be a little story today about how this car almost ended up in the junkyard, how I ended up with it, and how I got into Oldsmobiles. So yes, this thing almost ended up in the junkyard. So the story is, I picked this up from the junkyard, and the guy was telling me that the person who called him, the original owner of this car, ended up in the nursing home, and he had asked his friend to get rid of the car for him. Well, his friend called up the junkyard, said, "Hey, I got an old junker here. What will you give for me?" And so $300. He said, "All right." So he went with his flatbed, went and picked up the Delta here, and he got back and he's like, I can't junk this car. So he stuck it on Facebook Marketplace for $2,800. Now, like 5-10 years ago, these things were like a dime a dozen. They're getting rare and kind of a collectible now. And I think a lot of people my age that had these in the 90s and early 2000s when we were teenagers, looking to get them again. And I see them in this kind of condition on Facebook Marketplace, $6, $7, $8, sometimes $10,000. But this thing is not perfect. It was basically his daily driver since 1986. So I had the title when I went and bought this for $2,800. The guy had it since 1986 used. And he put, well, I'm not sure how many miles it had when he got it, but it had 80,000 when I purchased it. And I believe it was mostly city miles. Now, I drove all the way out from Ohio, Columbus, Ohio, to pick up this car. All the way to Nebraska. Lincoln, Nebraska is where this was where this car was at. Now, it needed tires, and I drove it back to my friend's house in Iowa and ordered tires and got tires put on it before my drive to Ohio. Notice it was a coolant leak, so I did put a radiator in it because the radiator was leaking and I didn't want to have any problems. But surprisingly, I drove the entire trip all the way from out here, 4 states, all the way back to Columbus, Ohio. Not a single problem. I drove this all the way to Columbus, Ohio, and didn't have a single problem. It was a beautiful, comfortable ride. Drove perfectly. I got 22 miles to the gallon with it. It was a very nice ride. No check engine lights, no weird vibrations. Brakes good. Performance, well, performance as good as you can have for an emissions choked 307 of the time period, with all the new emissions and computer controlled stuff going on in these early cars. And I kept it that way, trying to talk me into stripping all the emissions out, and I didn't want to do that. I wanted to keep it original. So when I got this back to Columbus, a good friend of mine who owns a shop went over it, and we got it up in the air. And one of the things that was really amazing is that there was basically, try to go from this side, and there was literally no rust or surface rust at all under the car. We went ahead and did there's like an undercoating. But yeah, we were both really surprised when we got underneath the car. It saw there's literally no rust anywhere. So I'm assuming this older gentleman never drove in the rain and always kept it garaged. When I had mine in the 90s, the pinstripe was just gone with rock chips, and so was the front where the Oldsmobile symbol is. And that's just incredible that it's still this nice. Now I ended up changes in job and situations, ended up moving to Iowa. My indoor heated storage facility location was gone, and I couldn't really afford something like that out here. So temporarily, while I have a garage, I was waiting on a garage door that I ordered to be put in. And while I was waiting on that, I got a temporary carport that I put up. Let's see if I can put up a video. I kind of, after the storm rolled through, it was like over 100 mile an hour. I kind of thought about taking the car out of the carport before the storm, but I didn't. But I did take the sides and the door off and left just the roof part on, because they're talking about maybe hail, and I really wanted to protect this thing from hail. It'd be a shame to make it worse. You know, the car survives this long, this nice, and then I happen to ruin it. Well, I kind of did a little bit. The storm knocked down the carport, and it put a dent and cut the vinyl top. You can kind of see the cut right there. A friend of mine said he could fix that vinyl. Not sure about the dent. You can kind of see the dent there. I can't even tell you how disappointed I am on that, because this vinyl top is like perfect. The few things that aren't so great is the some of the trim molding's just old and cracked on around the vinyl top. These bumper filler pieces, it's cracked and kind of missing. There's a person who makes these custom moldings for this bumper, this filler piece. So I got that ordered and I have it. I just got to get it installed and painted. The other thing I've noticed is that there's a spot on the door that's unfortunately sat out in the sun a little bit, transitioning in between the carport and the garage. And I'm not sure if you can see it there, but there's a blemish that started in the paint. And what used to be just a small blemish on the trunk is kind of getting a bit faded from that sitting outside there for a little bit, which is really a shame. I'm so glad that my garage door is in and installed, so she's in the garage again. Happy about that. For options, don't have the power windows or the power seats, but I do got the power locks. Get some wind flow. I'm up to 84,962 miles now. I haven't driven it that much, but it has made a trip all the way out to Ohio and then now all the way back. Did great on both those road trips. It's got a fairly large glove box. It's got the original owner's manuals. I wish I had, or they let me keep the original, well, almost original 86 title. That would have been pretty cool. It looks like he even originally had auto armor put in from way back. But the steering wheel is pretty good. It does have got a crack in it. The dash is great. Plenty of room. The clock does work. I just have it unplugged to keep my battery from drawing down. I did I did upgrade the factory radio to the factory radio with CB. So I thought it's really cool to have the CB radio. That's not the original antenna for the car. The original antenna was broken, so that's a temporary antenna I put on until I can get the OEM replacement. The seats are great shape, and to the amazement, this is the original vinyl top still, and it has not all the way come down. It is starting to come down. I don't want to touch it, but you can kind of see it's bubbling down right here. It's starting to come down right in here. And I believe there's a spot right here, yeah, that you can kind of see where it's starting to come down. But this was, even in the 90s, these things were down and you had thumbtacks holding it in. It's kind of incredible that somehow this car has survived all these years. Take a look at the back here. I did purchase the floor mats, the Oldsmobile floor mats for the car because it didn't have any. The back door complete with ashtray. No cigarette lighter like I think some of the higher trims for the Deltas and the Regencies have that. But you know, an ashtray. Fairly comfortable, large seats. This is a very nice, comfortable ride, even as a passenger. So I got started in Oldsmobile. My grandparents had them when I was growing up, and I just loved riding in their cars compared to my parents' vehicles. It was like one of those things when I get older, what I want is I want an Oldsmobile. And that was one of my first cars. It was a Cutlass. And then I also got a Delta, full size, 1980. And then I moved up to a couple of mid-size Oldsmobile Regency 98s, an 87 and an 88, 1987 and 1988. And even back then, the door seals, I mean, these aren't great shape. They're all original. The worst being the driver door. But mine were worse even back in the 90s and early 2000s. But they could use to be possibly replaced at some point in time. But the driver door there is the worst one of the bunch. Now there was one more seat upgrade where it's like a velvet. I had that in a 1984 Regency, full size, like this, but it had the velvet seats. And I believe you can get those with the Delta as well. It does have the remote trunk release. And let's take a look in there. It's a huge trunk. Not as big as the Chrysler that I have, the New Yorker 66, but it's big. And this is nice. None of the Oldsmobiles I had were this nice back in the day. Would love to have had this car back then. I can't believe it survived this long and almost ended up in the junkyard like this. That'd have been real sad. But $2,800, it was a kind of a lot, but considering prices these days, not so much. I'm happy with spending $2,800 on this car. It's been a great running car, comfortable ride. All right, let's start it up now. I'm gonna put my towel back in here real quick. Keep my stuff clean. Now I drove it down here so it's not cold or nothing, so this will be an easy start. But yeah, she just purrs. The only work I did to it after I got it back is I replaced the valve cover gaskets and I believe the oil pan gasket for the leaks. So she's got no leaks now. Did a tune-up on it, new spark plugs, new wires, new distributor cap, new rotor, air filter. That's it though. And coolants, I changed the transmission fluid and the oils and the filter for the transmission. I did add a little bit of that Lucas. It was shifting a little hard, in my opinion, and I put that stuff in there and that helped it a little bit. I don't think this guy ever drove it on the highway or out of town, really. I think it was just drove around city, so I think those 84,000 miles is pretty much all city miles. But it's the lowest mileage car I have and the lowest mileage Oldsmobile I've ever owned. The 84 Olds Delta brochure. I thought you could get the upgraded velvet seats, the velvet cloth seats. Those things are a pleasure. I really like those. Such a beautiful car. There's something about the front end that I just find pleasing on these Oldsmobiles of this era. I've never seen that steering wheel package before though. Well, stay tuned. There'll definitely be more videos of this Delta.